Gabriela, who is a lady, very distinguished, very smart, hardworking lady, conspired with Aisha, very distinguished, very smart, hardworking, Turkish G20 Sherpa. And they got together with another very distinguished, smart, hardworking Sherpa, Caroline Atkinson from the United States, who of course is also a young lady. And the three young ladies said, what do we do now? They said, let's get a man to propose this. They got the Japanese Sherpa, Mr. Nagamine. So of course Mr. Nagamine succumbed under the pressure. He could not absolutely say no, you know, because all these three smart, aggressive ladies were going there and saying, put this on the table. Mr. Nagamine proposed it. And before the others could even digest the notion, of course, the Turkish Sherpa raised her hand and said, what a wonderful idea, Mr. Nagamine, we support. And then, of course, the OECD Sherpa said, we support. The American Sherpa said, we support. And that was done. Everybody else after that had absolutely no choice. And it was done. So, congratulations to Gabriela, to Aisha, to Caroline Atkinson, and of course to Mr. Nagamine, who had something to do. This is a story about participating men, you know. And again, you know, I don't want to overdo this. Nationally, I recommend that I should not insist too much on this question of men participating, but effectively the question is that as a result of the fact that there is a differentiated asymmetric development in terms of the responsibilities and the power, if we do not include men in the solutions, of course, we will not be making as fast progress. But I think we all understand that. There's also some of the obvious things. Already, Christine mentioned Japan. Let me just tell you, I mean, Japan is the oldest society in the OECD. But a country like Korea is today, I think, the third youngest and is going to become, by 2050, the second oldest. They are at that moment where the curve of demographics will move very, very fast downwards in terms of aging. And what is statistically the solution to at least slowing this process so that you do not have more and more and more retired people that have to be maintained by a smaller and smaller number of working people? Women. They happen to be two of the countries where women's participation as a percentage in terms of the labor force is more differentiated from those of the men, and where all these phenomena about pay gaps and opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also these interruptions in careers, you know, when they have babies and when then they have to take care of the elderly, et cetera, et cetera. And all are putting on, because of this evidence that we've been presenting again and again, and all the evidence that is available to them. It's not just because the OECD is saying it, but because we've been saying it for 40 years, but also because everybody has been now looking at it, and there's the evidence is indisputable, and that is, if you do not, it's like in the sailors, you know, the marine terms, you need all hands on deck. Because if you don't, you are not going to be able to continue to grow the economy. You're not going to be able to continue to have this dynamism, an economy as vibrant as that of Korea, which is an example in many aspects, like Japan was not too long ago in terms of the vibrancy and the importance and the breakthroughs, etc. Obviously, it's not going to happen because of the aging process. And again, the participation of women here is extremely important. Let me now say that many of the problems that we have today in everything, we attribute or want to attribute, try to attribute it to somebody else. In the particular case of the problems of gender equality, the challenges of gender equality, when we published this, education, employment, and entrepreneurship conclusions, what did we find? Well, we found that already we're making a lot of progress, that women are going to first, second, tertiary educations, that they mostly get better grades than the men, that when it moves into the job market is when the problem starts. Okay, that is a relatively well-known story. The problem that is not so well analyzed and studied is that when you talk about STEM disciplines, sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics, it is not because the women are less successful than the men, it is because they are not there. And then you go one step behind and you say, why are they not there? And they are not there because we are generating a culture of their not being there. And that is, in even the most modern societies, the parents in the house, the teachers in the schools, even the bosses in the office, they all have a certain framework in their minds about the role of women, and it does not fit science, technology, engineering, mathematics, etc. And then what you do is you condition from a very early age the girls, the young ladies, the students, etc., not to go for that. You create an additional obstacle, something that is not necessarily legal, certainly not, but very much cultural, yes. And therefore, you waste opportunities. And again, we go back to underutilization of women as this formidable asset for economic development and growth. Now, let me just comment a bit, because before this day, we arrived, what seems now a long time ago. On Thursday and on Friday, we had meetings with the labor ministers of the world, of the G20. Then on the Friday evening or afternoon, we had a joint meeting between the labor ministers of the G20 and the finance ministers of the G20. And then yesterday, we had all day the ministers of finance of the G20. And today, of course, we have the W20. In the meantime, there was a B20 and there was an L20, so all the 20s have been getting together here. But inequality was a word that was used in practically every single one of those meetings. And, it's obvious, yes, we all are, inclusiveness is one of your eyes, because equality is the objective. But again, if you look at the inequalities, it's not just one inequality, in the outcomes, women have, and they are overrepresented, let's say, when sharing the burden. And that happens at the lowest level of development, when the traditional image about who is going to fetch the water and who is going to prepare the fire in the most primitive societies.